What's up, guys? New day in the shop. GoPro's dead because I forgot to charge it using the iPhone for right now. I think today, just gonna keep it pretty simple and gonna start tearing apart the diff and getting it ready to build or starting to put it together. I'm not really sure. We'll have to see how it all goes. All right, so first step is obviously gonna be to drain it because I left all the fluid in it. So it does have a drain plug on the bottom, but the reason why I didn't drain this one is because I brought it with me in case I didn't like the other one that I had built or in case it broke or anything. But since I got to pull the cover anyways, I'm just going to drain it that way. So let's get this cover off. Get the bolts out of the line of fire, the rest of them out of the cover. All right. Now it's siliconed on, so I'm gonna try and tap that open without making a huge mess. Hopefully most of this fluid goes into this drain pan, but I probably won't get so lucky. All right, so now I'll just tap on the corners or on the edge. There we go, you can hear it split. Conveniently, I was plumb out of brake clean. So I'm not gonna be able to rinse this out very well, but I'll get what I can drain out of it and then I'll put it up here next to all the trans stuff that's still there and we'll start ripping it apart. All right, first thing we gotta do, pulling this apart, is to get the stub shafts out of here. So usually you just gotta, yep, there you go. It'll just work out. It's just this little C-clip here that holds it in. So you just gotta pop those free. Just like that. And they're the same side to side, so you don't gotta worry about that. Now, with that out, we can take the carrier caps off. I think those will be a 17. Yep, those are 17. So we'll loosen these up. Couple things. There's gonna be shims in between the bearing and the housing on both sides. For ease, you wanna keep those side to side. So now these caps should be loose. And they are. You can wiggle them side by side. But we gotta get the diff kind of, or the carrier itself actually like separated out of the bearing a little bit. So I'm gonna leave those caps on for the time being, just so as I'm prying on this, it doesn't completely fall out. I don't know if you guys can see that, but it did come out a bit. So that's cool, it's not gonna be too stuck. So I'm gonna go ahead and get these caps off, now that we know it's a little bit free. Put this guy over here and this guy over here, and then when the bearing races and shims come out, we'll put them to their respective sides. So I've moved a little bit. I don't know if it'll be enough, not quite enough for me to pull it out by hand. I'll try and support it with my hand a little bit. And there we go. So this shim here, we'll keep it with the race. We'll put it right there. We'll do the same thing with this side. Shim and race. And then, just like that, our whole carrier comes out. Easy peasy, there's really not much to it. So one of the things we got is we got new carrier bearings, we got new ring gear, and we got new pinion gear. So if any of you have built a diff before, you know there's also shims in the pinion, and there's a pinion spacer I have an adjustable pinion spacer to set preload on. And yeah, we'll get into all that. Conveniently, I also ran out of rags while I was cleaning this up, but that should be all right. I just, without rags and without brake clean, I'm not sure how much of this project I want to get done today, because I want to make sure everything is cleaned up nice and I'm not just getting dirty the whole time. So now we'll take the pinion nut off. Yep, 30 millimeter will do it. So now just run this pinion nut off. Easy peasy. So the pinion nut, there's a washer. And I would imagine my new kit comes with these, but you see the nut is a stake style. So, oh, well that pops off nice and easy. I wasn't expecting that. That's nice. So I'm gonna keep the nut, the flange, everything together here. So now the pinion's gotta go out that way, but it's gonna be pretty stuck in there. So one of the ways you can do it is put it in the press and press this. But I think the way I'm gonna try first, just so I don't have to worry about getting gear oil all around my press, I'm going to air hammer that pinion, and hopefully it just pops right through without any difficulty. I held off for a minute while the compressor was running. But you guys saw the pinion punch through. I'm gonna pop this seal out. All right, well, so the pinion is now sitting inside the differential housing, just like so. You can see we just have, looks like just one fat shim in there. We'll have to look. This is the preload spacer, the crush sleeve. So we'll set this off to the side. Inside here, we don't really got to worry about anything falling over yet. Now we'll work at the seal some more. And I know I'm gonna end up punching myself when this pops out somehow. All right, so that seal went flying off. Here's that, as well as I knocked over one of my shift forks from the transmission. That's what the clanging sound was. So now inside here, we have this other little shim, as well as the outer pinion seal, or outer pinion bearing. So I'm just gonna wipe this shim off. Not really sure. I don't know if I've seen an outer pinion shim. So that's kind of interesting, but I'm sure it's there for a reason. So we'll put it right back where it came from when it goes back together. All right, so now I'm just gonna clean this up a little bit. Got outer races in here that will need to pop out, and new ones will be going in. All right, let's look at what we got real quick. So this is the Driftmotion upgraded 29 spline kit. Some people don't like this kit because they don't like Yukon, but I've run Yukon a lot in off-road Land Cruisers, and if it could hold up to that, pretty sure it could hold up just fine to a 450 horsepower drift car. So yeah, we have our upgraded pinion gear with a higher spline count, and it's just a little fatter, a little stronger. For that, we also have the matching spline pinion flange, which is also multi-hold. We have pinion bearings. We have carrier bearings. We've got our solid sleeve for the pinion. No more crush sleeve and shims for that, so you can set the preload properly. We got the pinion seal and both output seals. So I think first of all, maybe we just start easy. Let's get the ring gear off the carrier and press off those bearings. Then we go press on new bearings, put the ring gear on. All right, so we'll grab our carrier, our LSD here. We'll flip it over. We'll give ourselves a little room because this is actually hanging over the edge. There we go, now we're on the table a little bit. So on these bolts, you can see they got these little tabs that are bent in, just little keepers to keep the bolts from backing out. So to start, we'll get those all pressed out of the way. They shouldn't be too hard. All right, so I believe all those are pressed enough that we should be able to fit our socket on here now. Yep, so that's also a 17 mil, so we'll just run these all out. With all those bolts loose, the pinion should, or the ring gear should pop off. But I'm just gonna get these all out of the way. Not have to worry about those going anywhere. All right, now I'll try with just the plastic dead blow. It's a lot tougher than I thought it was gonna be. It's not uncommon for these to just slip off a little easier than that. There we go. All right, now we have our carrier, our LSD, separated from our ring gear. So now obviously we won't be needing the ring gear anymore, but just to make sure everything's kosher, we'll grab the new one, make sure it's about the same. And it appears to be the same diameter, same inside diameter. So we know we got the right one. So now I get to set up my bearing knife on here, up under that inner race if I can, and then press these bearings off. All right, well, with my biggest bearing knife, it doesn't stick past the carrier enough to actually set this on the press and then press this off. I don't believe I have the bolts for this to actually use this as a puller. I'll have to look, but I might have to support it by these, which I hate doing because then you could bend these all threads. So let me look into this a little bit, and then I'll find a way to get it in the press. All right, I'm not sure if this is actually gonna work, but I put some through bolts through with nuts on the backside, and then I'm gonna try and press it off of the carrier like this. Not sure if it's gonna work, but I figured it's worth a shot. So I'm gonna have to keep that nut from spinning, obviously. On both sides. Wrench. That's pressing off quite lovely, honestly. That bolt's bottomed out, but I think I should be able to get the rest of it with this bolt. And there we go. I'm actually really happy with that. That worked really well. Pulled the bearing off all in one piece. That is pretty nice. So now we just gotta do the same thing with this side. And I might just stand it right up like that. So once again, I'll get the bearing knife set up. It's pretty boring, so hold on. All right, so the bolt trick's not gonna work on this side because there's nothing for it to press onto, but it'll fit in the press without being wonky. So let's do that. Well, I was incorrect. The carrier actually doesn't fit in between my 30-ton press rail. So I guess I can't do it like that because I don't think I have anything I could space these up with. Let me look around. All right, well, I was able to get my medium-sized bearing knife on here, and it's barely on. But it should be enough. There's not really a whole lot of outward tension at this point. So then I just use a socket to mate up to the carrier, and I'll run that, and we'll see if she comes off. All right, let's see if it'll have what it takes to do it. put some safety glasses on. Easiest thing to find is this face shield, so I'm gonna put this whole face shield on, just in case any of those rollers want to pop out of there while I'm pressing on it. I'm definitely not pressed onto the inner race as much as I should be, but that's as good as I can get with that that bearing knife there. So that's not going to work. Before we give up on that, we'll try some 1/2 inch air power. Yep, just as I suspected, more power is always the answer. All right, so we'll get all this stuff out of the way. Obviously it doesn't matter because we're not reusing these, but you can see there where the bearing knife actually hit it, and now this bearing is ruined. No good. But like I said, we're not reusing it anyways, so it's not a big deal. All right, a little bit interesting. The new bearings actually have more rollers than the old ones. It's a Toyota bearing, part number and everything, and it's gonna fit and all. Must just be an update or something. I don't know. Not sure what the advantage really is, but so now I'll find something that sits on this inner race here, and then I'll put it in the press and pop it on. All right, so I've got it set up. The new bearing on top, about to go on. I've got this old bearing race that I'm using, and then these are just to kind of take up the space. But it should just easy press on just like that. All right, there we go, we're bottomed out. Let the press up about that much for the next side. And then we'll look here. So we're pretty much flush with the top because that's all we could do with that race. And it's hard to say if we're actually pressed all the way on. I'm gonna grab a feeler gauge and just make sure. All right, so I went ahead and I pressed on the other side while I was at it and put a feeler gauge under there. It is butted up against it. You can see it does actually sit lower than that just a little bit. And should be good to go. Make sure when, I mean, you guys realize this, but the bearings come with new outer races, obviously. Where's the opening for this dang bag? So yeah, they come with new outer races. So make sure you use the new ones, not the old ones. And yeah, so that part is done. Now, let's go ahead and we'll clean this up. I already cleaned up the surface here a little bit, but I'll wipe this down, get all that excess crud off there, and then we'll get this guy there. All right, got this surface wiped down, feels pretty smooth. We're gonna put this guy here like this. All right, I was able to get it pressed on and lined up. Just to not leave you guys hanging dry, I put a couple 2x4s under the teeth in the press, and then I just pressed it on and make sure I did it with my holes lined up for these bolts here. And we're gonna go ahead and thread lock these. And I'll just go ahead and throw all these together, and then we'll pick up from there. All right, so those do have a torque spec, but I just went ahead and set them to tight. Obviously, I recommend you find the torque spec, especially if you're new to this and you don't really have a feel for how tight things are actually getting. Just a safe way to go about it. So now we'll punch all these little tabs, these little holder tabs back in. right, I've got it set up in the press with the bearing knife and everything. Hopefully I don't get too much in the way, but I'm gonna keep a hand underneath so that way the pinion gear doesn't just completely drop out. Oh, it's getting really tight. Let's close this here. I'm not too worried about the bearing because it's getting a new one. There we go. It slid. It just needed a little more oomph. All right, so I got the new pinion out, and look at the difference here. The new one is much fatter in all the places it needs to be. So that's cool. So I'm gonna just transfer this pinion shim here. Hopefully that's all we actually need, is just putting it back to where factory spec is. All right, so here's the new pinion bearing. The nice thing about these is they give you all this space to press onto. Sometimes when you gotta press the bearing on and off a few times to get the shimming correct, you could ruin a bearing. So sometimes if your old bearing comes off nice enough, you can just kind of like hollow it out or hog it out just a little bit to slide on for fit up purposes. But since this has this big fat piece of the inner race to press onto, I'm not too worried about it. I'll be able to press this on and off just fine. So now we have our shim under there, we have our bearing. So I'm gonna press it on and get it ready for test fit. And hopefully test fit is just one and done, so I don't have to do this again, but I'm not likely to get that lucky. All right, it's all set up in the press. Don't forget your shim. It's a very important piece. Oh, I should probably tighten this release here. It's usually a good first step of using a hydraulic press. Man, this is gonna take too long. I'm just gonna, there we go. The pinion bearing is pressed on. We can release the press. And there we have it, pressed on with the shim. Next step in the process, we gotta get these outer shims out. You can see on the back side of that one, we have a lot of space to press against, or to hammer against really. So wherever my big punch is, I can put the punch right on the inside of this and smack it, and then go on this side and smack it, and then just work my way around until that inner race comes out. No way I just got those inner races out without actually recording. Or outer races. Sorry guys, I don't know what happened. I'm a little bummed. I screwed up the record button and didn't actually record pressing out that inner race there, or outer race. I keep saying that. I pressed out the frickin' race. Okay. So now let's press in the new races. So I have this bearing race install tool, and I'm just gonna find the one that fits that best. None of them I have really properly fitted, but these are aluminum, so it's not going to damage the hardened steel. So even though it's not a perfect fit, it's not going to damage the seal or the race surface, and we should be all right. All right, so now the fun part, because this inner race, this inner outer race, sits in there so deep that I can't really hold this and get a hammer on it. But I have an idea. I have this here piece of DOM tubing. To make that extension out of. Alright, so I felt it start to pop out, which means it likely straightened itself out. I think I might actually put this in the press instead of hammering it in, just because it's taking a lot of hammering for this inside bearing anyways. So set things back up in the press, I guess. All right, so it's not going perfectly smooth. It's taking a lot of force, but the brace is going in. So I'm just gonna keep pressing away. I'm actually using an extension on this handle. I just pulled it off just to check, make sure everything looked good, because it was, I thought it was done. It was feeling like it was done. So I got this piece of black pipe on there, and I've got about an 1/8 inch more to go, so I'll let you guys know. All right, well, I got the inner bearing race installed. Yeah, now we'll go ahead and we'll do the outer pinion bearing race. So we'll just go ahead and we'll set the race right in there where it's gonna wanna start. And we'll take our tool. And we drive it in until it stops. It hasn't stopped yet. I'm just checking to see if it's gone in straight. It's a little bit crooked. Yeah, it might be too crooked to want to go in at this point. Oh, gosh dang it. This isn't going as easy as I thought, guys. I think I'll just pop this one back out and then just take it to the press again. I went cheap on my race driver set. And it seems to be showing. That's all right. Live and learn. So now let me get this giant freaking thing set up in my press so we can drive this little guy in. All right, I went ahead and I got that in the press and I got that done. Didn't bore you guys with the whole press situation again. So now it is time to mess with our solid spacer preload crush washer extravaganza. So in a perfect world, that will get us very close to where we need to be. So this guy plus these two shims should get us pretty close. All right, so I didn't show my struggles, but I did finally get that bearing to start going onto that shaft, the pinion shaft. Pretty sure it was just the coating on the shaft making it tough for that bearing. But I'm running this nut in right now, and I'm going slow. I'm checking. If you guys can see, I have that lateral play right there. And my nut's not tight yet, so I'm gonna go a little more. I don't have any more lateral play. And now it's too tight. So I have too much spacing in between those bearings. So instead of damaging my bearings by just running this on, now get to have the fun time of pressing it back apart. Answer is no. Back to the freaking press. All right, I took some time to think about it, and my brain was working backwards. I should have put more shims in to start, and then reduce. I had it backwards, thinking less shims would add more play, but obviously less shims would squeeze it together more. So that was just silly thinking. So now I have the nut fully tightened with way too much shim in here. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take a feeler gauge, or not a feeler gauge, I'm sorry, a dial indicator, and figure out how much lateral movement we actually have. And then that'll help me figure out how much shim to take out to try and get close to the preload we need. So here I have this dial indicator I will set up. All right, so we're roughly 0. If we lift, we're about 50 thousandths away from 0. So press it back apart, take about 50 thousandths off, maybe just a little less, and I'll show you guys this all again. All right, so I got the pinion pressed back out. I will get my digital caliper here, I'm gonna set it to inches since that's what we just were measuring with. And let's see if I could find about just under 50, I think is what I want. I think we want just a tiny bit of preload or spacing. There we go. I'm about 48 thou, which is probably what I want for my next test. So I'm gonna press this back into the housing, into that bearing, and we'll check lash again. All right, so I have it set up with the dial indicator solid this time. I took that 48 or 46 thou out. And now as far as lateral goes, I have about 3 thousandths, maybe more like 2. Yeah, I have about 2 thousandths. So now I gotta do a little research. All right, so apologies for me figuring this out as I go, but it's been a long time since I set up a diff, and I've hardly done any by myself. Actually, this is the only one I've done by myself. So what I want to do is so I measured about 2 thousandths, so I want to take out 2 thousandths shim. I want to try and get as close to 0 as possible. But I also want this to have the proper amount of torque to turn. So I don't have the proper tool for that here today, but I can still at least get my lash, and I could, I got a pretty good feel for it. So let me press this apart again, and then we'll remove about 2 thousandths of a shim. All right, so let's see which one of these shims gives us about what we want. So let's put it back together. Maybe for the last time, maybe not. All right, I think I finally have the right setup in here. I've got 0 lash, and I've got a pretty decent amount to turn it. Obviously, I need to check it with a torque gauge and see how it goes. But for now, since I don't have any lash, I believe I could put the carrier in and see how things are gonna line up. Like I said, I don't have any, or I don't know if I said, I don't currently have any pattern checking paint. Obviously I could use other things, so I might do that tonight. I might just wait till tomorrow because I have some at work I could bring home. All right, it's been a few days. I'm back on the diff build using the GoPro again. Figure this video will give me a little bit of half and half of whether the phone or the GoPro is going to be better. But anyways, on the diff build, I ran a pattern. As you can see, the pinion is a little shallow. So I didn't have pinion shims, so I didn't do anything until now. I got my pinion shims in the mail yesterday. So we're gonna add a little bit of pinion shim just to try and get the drive side down a little bit more. Try and center it up a bit. So, unfortunately, you gotta disassemble the whole thing again. But that's just part of building the diffs, It's time consuming, it's not really difficult. Don't let it scare you. It's really not that bad. So the backlash is a little high right now, but as that pinion pushes in, it's also going to take away some of that backlash because of the tapers. Obviously this is tapered, the ringer's tapered. So always set your pinion depth first and then worry about backlash. Adding pinion depth shim is obviously going to change the solid spacer shimming a little bit because it changes the position of the pinion shaft and bearings and stuff. So let's just tear into it and I'll go over it as we go. Also, while I'm getting set up, I realized that this is they call it a slinger, oil slinger. And obviously it doesn't fit. I showed it in a video in one of the previous clips. It doesn't fit because now I have a 29 spline. This is 27 spline, but I ordered one for a 29 spline, so I'll still have the gear slinger. It's probably important. So anyways, let's Let's get this carrier out of here, which is fun because it's always a little tight, but I mean, it is what it is. What is happening? Alright, now that the carrier's out of there, we will flip this around and we'll pull off the pinion flange again. Now we will press out the pinion and do all that fun stuff. Alright, so pinion spacer with the shims. I'm going to keep that off to the side so I remember all that. But while I'm at it, I was curious because I have another pinion spacer that I bought before deciding I was going to go with the 29 spline. So if you're wondering, your 27 spline pinion spacer will work just fine on a 29 spline. So no need to buy a new solid pinion spacer if you're gonna go to the 29 spline and you already have one on your 27 spline. Your 27 spline one will work just fine. So now I gotta get my bearing knife up under here, measure the shim that I have in there, and then I'm just gonna make sure I add about like 4 thousandths to that, just to start off. I don't know how much you'll be able to see with the GoPro, but I have the bearing knife on there, and it's not gonna damage the bearing at all. It's just sitting right on that fat chunk of inner race they give you. So now I gotta reset up the press to bring it up closer since the pinion's so small, and then I'll press that off and we'll measure. All right, we're set up in the press. I just have these to take up the space. So hopefully you guys don't fall on my head. I'm gonna start pressing this inner pinion bearing back off. Alright, well you guys just took a crash, but this pinion is pressing out. I don't know if I can sit you guys here really and be able to see. Alright, we got the pinion off. Let's just check our bearing real quick. There's no excess play. The knife didn't touch anywhere down here. So yeah, pinion bearing's still fine. Which it should be. There's so much of this to press on, but. All right, so like I said, I want to add probably 3 or 4 thousandths to this. So the first step, we're gonna measure what we have in there now. And what we have in there now is 74 thousandths. And it says that all the way around. So we know that's true. 74 thousandths is what we have. All right, so I went ahead and measured them all and marked them. Got these 50s here. Got 2 20s. I got a 13, 14, and a couple of 11s. So now it should be a simple thing of math. That's a 74. So 50, that would mean I need 28 basically. This would give us 27, 13, and 14, right? So now let's measure that out, see if that's accurate. So this should measure out to 47 thou. I think it's an issue of squish right now between all these. So this sometimes will measure about 78, 76, 75, 77. So since I'm getting inaccurate readings all the time, I'm gonna take the 11 back out and put the 14 in. We're gonna run this setup and then check it again. I think, you know, It's kind of a hit or miss game, and it really kind of sucks to have to press the pinion on and off, but we have about 80 thou, and here we have about 74 thou. Now I'm second guessing myself again. Alright, so I got the inner pinion bearing pressed back on with the shims. Make sure you press it to where the shims are smushed, because otherwise you'll set it up and then have a different reading, because these might smush in as you tighten the nut. But I have the inner race supported by this old inner race, so that way I'm just pressing the pinion on the inner race itself and the bearings aren't smushed. Saved you guys the boring process of setting up the press again, but now I'm just repressing the pinion back onto the outer bearing basically. So there's a little hole in here that the pinion is now pressing through and the bearing is pressing on essentially. So get this done and then I'll put my flange on and we'll go from there. All right, something I didn't show is I did take a little bit of the pinion spacer shim out. I took about 2/1000 out because I was just a little bit loose before. But I didn't want to go too much, so hopefully if anything I have too much shim in there still after adding more than I took out, but we'll find out. So now I just want to tighten this down. Oh, and I think I actually nailed that. No lateral play, and the tension feels right. That feels really good. I'm really happy with that. So hopefully, and you guys, I've set up diffs before, so I kind of know what they feel like. To do it properly, you want to use a like manual torque wrench basically, and just see what kind of inch pounds it takes to turn this thing. But I know that's going to be really good, so I'm gonna leave it. Hopefully our pattern's good, so I could leave all that how it is. All right, so now we'll put our carrier back in. Carrier shims. Now obviously these fit pretty tight, so get it started in there and as far as you can, and then I'll just give it a little tap. I use a brass hammer because the brass won't damage the hardened steel, so I'll just give that a tap-a-roo till it sits about flush with the bearing race. And now we tighten it down and we recheck our pattern. Backlash feels like it still might be a little excessive, but let me clean my hands real quick. We will repaint and recheck this pattern. And then if that's good, we'll start figuring out backlash, which if backlash isn't in spec, I don't have any carrier shims, so I'm gonna have to order those and wait on that again. Hopefully that's not the case, but from what I'm feeling by hand, it still feels like backlash is like 11 thou, which is too much. So anyways, let me put a stop on this. I'm just gonna go ahead and paint right over the paint I already had on there. That way I don't get it mixed up with another spot. So we'll just coat over where we patterned before. Make sure you get it fully covered there. All right, that looks pretty good, pretty even. I'm gonna use a ratchet to turn the pinion. I'm just gonna get it close to the pinion first before I do all this. and you'll see why in a second. All right, so I got my paint close to the pinion. I'm gonna turn it with this. While you're turning it, you also want to add some load or simulate load, kind of. So I'm gonna cram this pry bar in here to make it hard to turn. And we're gonna make sure we turn it all the way past the paint. So yeah, I went plenty far enough because we can see the paint coming out the other side now. So let's wind it back a little bit. Get it close, and we're gonna add load going the other way as well. Wow, okay, so that hardly brought us down at all. It brought us down a decent amount, but we still got to go a lot more. Can you guys see that? Yeah, kind of. So yeah, our pattern's still up on the outside of the ring gear. See it? It is better, but we want it quite a bit lower. So, since we just added what? Just a little bit? I think I'm going to now add 11 thousandths, so just one of these single shims, to the factory shim here. And then we'll try it again. Building diffs is so fun. Alright, I did it all again. I added shim to the pinion depth, and now I painted it, and we're gonna check the pattern again. Alright, are we still rolling? Yep, we're still rolling. Alright, so the coast side, I'm not sure if you guys can really see it. It's looking pretty good. Not too bad. Our drive side, also really not looking too bad. It's kind of near the top. I'm not sure if I need it to be any lower than that. I might consult my expert gear builder on that one. But while we have it pretty well in the ballpark, let's check our backlash just to see where we're at there. Well, I think I finally got it. I had to take it back apart again. I wasn't happy with it. The pattern was too far outside. Wouldn't have worn very well. So I'm waiting for a message back from my gear expert. But that pattern looks pretty dang good to me. Looks pretty close to centered to the inside and the outside. And it's not too far heel and toe. On the coast side, it's a little harder to see, but it's about the same. So I think this is the setup. I ended up actually adding a 20 thousandths and an 11 thousandths shim. So after I took it apart with not the factory shim, how do I say this? So I took it apart. I put the factory shim back in with the 20 thousandths, and I was like, let's see where this gets me. And that was the pattern I showed where I thought I might be good, but it was just a little too outside. I was just really hoping to not have to do it again. So then I took it back apart, added another 11 thousandths to that, and then put it back together, and now my pattern's pretty good. I broke my dial indicator when trying to check my backlash. So this feels pretty good, but it's apart, so I gotta figure out a dial indicator and get this checked real quick before I call it good. Technically I can't put it in right now anyways because I don't have my oil slinger. That'll get here on Monday, and it's Saturday. So yeah, I'll see if I can find a dial indicator. But I think that pretty much concludes this diff build. The video is probably going to be all over the place because I'm all over the place and I had to take it apart and put it back together so many times. I did videos on my phone, did videos on the GoPro. Building cars, it's always a good time, especially when you are just a broke guy in your garage trying to do it all yourself, you know? So, with that said, I'm calling that good. Well, I'll get the oil slinger and then I'll take this flange back off, put the slinger on, put the new seal on, pop that back on, put the new output seals on, put the axle stubs back in, obviously put the diff cover on, and then I'll re-up the paint on this guy. So, yeah, I think that'll do it. Obviously, once you get it all done, set this to the right torque and then stake that so it doesn't come backing off. They also say to use Loctite on it. If you stake it, it shouldn't spin off, but Loctite's cheap insurance. Anyways, hope this video comes out all right. Thank you guys for watching if you did. Hopefully it was helpful to someone. Hopefully the next one's a little more fun. All right, thanks guys.